we know everyone's on the burnout spectrum. So you're not alone. You're either, we all experience it in some way or fashion. So what can you do for that, right? How can you address that as a form of development, right? I think that we're overlooking that sometimes in the fact that like people want to stuff it down and be like, hey, I'm fine.
People tell us independently we all need investment in self-care, and yet they go to tactical items like performance and feedback. And
that's our achievement culture speaking, right? Like,
welcome to the Unconventional Leadership Podcast, where we help you unlock your potential as a leader. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Unconventional Leadership Podcast. I have the distinct pleasure today to be with team member Melanie Booher, Engagement and Experience Officer here at Talent Magnet Institute, and previous guest of this podcast.
That's right.
So, Melanie, thank you for joining me today for this discussion. So, our hope is to bring all of you into this dialogue. So, feel free as you're listening and we prompt thoughts, take notes, send us messages, and let's continue the conversation even beyond this episode. But Melanie, it is a real pleasure. Last time we spoke about culture and all of the amazing leadership and work that you have done, research and science around culture. Do you want to share with those tuning in a little bit about that background?
Sure. So thrilled to be here, Mike. Thank you so much for having me. So I guess I got my roots in kind of the human resources world, and I actually made a huge, I don't know if it was an epiphany for me, that so much of what we did was around culture. And so I actually had started my own business about 9 years ago, all focused on how do we make the world a better place in workplaces, right? It was always very human-driven, human-centric, but I wanted to kind of veer out of some of the HR world and be more culture-focused. So started doing some great work, and it just kept growing, right? So that idea of wrote a couple books, put out a game, which has been really a labor of love, so maybe we'll talk a little bit more of that later, but trying to just figure out ways how in the world that we live in today, how do we make sure that culture, building into people, enjoying what we do every day because we spend so much time working. How do we make those great things happen? And I am just thrilled that the stuff that I've done led me to you and to working with the Talent Magnet team, because I feel like it's, I'm excited for all that is to come.
Yeah. Well, and for those, how do you define culture, and what can I, the listener, the audience member, do about it in my personal work day and work world? Yeah.
So I get asked that a lot, like, how do you define it? And I do feel like, just like if I asked you to define integrity or something else, we'd all have a little bit different definition. I see it as, some combination of when the leader steps away from the workplace, the interactions, the vibe, the feeling, all the stuff that's happening so that they can walk away, right? What is happening in the workplace? How are we treating people? It's the 15 feet of space around you and how that continues, whether you're there or not. So both the tangible, the intangible, the strategy, like all the stuff that's happening in a workplace, that really is the heart of what culture is.
Mm-hmm. And as a team member in an environment, like let's just say that I'm sitting here and I'm listening, I'm like, the reason why I tuned in is because of culture and leadership and hearing the great work that Melanie's done, hearing what TMI's doing it. And what can I individually do to improve my own perspective, my own team dynamics, my own relationships? Are there some key things that you would share?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is to recognize that culture is felt at the team level, and it is also built by many, right? It is not, you can't set culture on the CEO's shoulders and say, hey, it's your responsibility, or on HR's shoulders. Everyone is contributing. So what I would say is, the best practice, if I was to kind of even name, there's lots of them, but is to be intentional in how we develop the culture. So that idea of I'm winging it, we hear a lot of like connections and it just felt good. That's great, and you should feel that. But what are you doing to be intentional in it? Building it into behaviors, building it into habits that you already have, as opposed to just going, today I really need to focus on culture. Well, that doesn't really work. That's not human nature. Yeah. So when we're coaching around like how to drive great culture, the idea would be, do you have a plan? Do you work it? Does it show up? And does your team do that with you? Yeah. Right? We're not winging it.
That's right. And then how do cards for culture play into this, which is the amazing game that you've created?
Thank you. Yeah. So for those out there, if you've ever played, Cards Against Humanity, that's the more, Apples to Apples is the nicer version. If you've ever played a game like that, Cards for Culture really is this game that we've created, and we typically play with leadership teams, although you can play with others as well. And what it does is it really helps you go back in and have conversations you've just never had before. So the first deck of cards is around while you may call them values, we call them keys to success. And it helps you build out and make sure you're having words that you apply, right? So what are those really important words that we're working towards? I can tell you most companies use about the same 7, integrity, communication, innovation, service. Like there's some core ones that tend to manifest. And then that's really the discussions happening in the first round of cards. The second round is where the rubber really meets the road, which is the behavior-based cards. So imagine we're all sitting around a table and again, the word, let's say service comes up. Well, how do we deliver great service? Those behavior cards that people are throwing in are really, really important, because while I may have been in service my whole life, customer service, whatever, it's not until you start saying, well, when I say it, I mean this. This is the behavior. I deliver on time. I go above and beyond. I give the customer what they need, even if they're asking for something different, right? I make sure I deliver. I used to work for a big department store call center, and we used to say, like, you never hang up on a customer, right? Like that was one of our core tenets. And so those would be the kinds of cards you'd want to be throwing in. And what we find really cool about it is that most people just haven't had that conversation. Like you walk in and you're like, well, the words are on the wall. Yeah, I know what integrity means. Well, you know what it means based on your beliefs, right? Like, but we didn't grow up in the same house. We didn't grow up in the same city. We didn't go to the same schools or churches or whatever. And so we have to have that conversation with our leadership teams. That's what the cards bring out, which has been so much fun. So it's a process. It makes it fun. It gamifies.
Yeah. The one thing that I loved about the own experience that I've been through with it is everybody then has a voice. So many organizations would say they have their mission, vision, and values.
For sure.
Some would even say they know their culture because they've told the organization what their mission and vision and values is, which we would argue is the culture is made up of the thousands and thousands of interactions that people have inside your organization. All of the micro experiences, all of the communication cues all feed into what a culture actually is. One of the ways to do an amazing refresh around mission, vision, and values is to do this with Cards for Culture.
For sure.
And allow the openness of agreement, disagreement, dialogue, debate, and, oh, by the way, which is what the magic is in leadership, is you're going to hear perspective from everyone you invite to that conversation. So there's not going to be a dominant voice. And if there is a dominant voice, you may encourage her or him to kind of sit back in this dialogue and listen to everyone's perspective. Because how often do we hear in the work that we're doing at Talent Magnet, the work that you've done in the culture space, of we just really haven't had this conversation before. I mean, we even had a client last year use Cards for Culture, and we used it as a team building facilitation exercise just to get them free flowing and creating a safe environment to have debate and argument. I know when we did it, we had a couple team members say, I don't know if that is exactly what we are. We say we want to be. Are we really showing up that way?
Yeah.
And it creates these incredible discussion points, incredible open dialogue for all of the people invited in the room. And, oh, by the way, you can do it yourself, but there's a reason why individuals are called master facilitators, right? There's a next leveling up when you have an outside third-party facilitator who has no, quote unquote voice in the game. My goal is to create a little bit of tension and create alignment through the facilitation of a great exercise like this.
Totally agree. But participation is key, right? Like you want people to talk. And so it does matter. Like, well, who's helping facilitate, and can you ask the questions and guide it along, but also know when to be quiet. Yeah. What you mentioned too was the aspirational piece. So, when we're playing the game, like we actually say, like, this is you on your best day. So I'll have companies say, well, we want to be fun. We're not. Or we want to give back to community.
Right.
And they're like, but that's not showing up. That's not showing up on a regular basis. And so the question is, well, why isn't it? Yeah. Well, we haven't made it part of our key priorities. And so that's definitely very important. And then that next, like kind of even the third piece, if you will, was the bring it to life deck. And I think that's where a lot of companies, so you might have these great vision values, they're up on the wall. You tell people about it, orientation, but then what happens, right? And so where I think we really have some great opportunity, even as a talent magnet team, is to be able to say, hey, Cards for Culture might be a great introductory, could be a little good team building, build great conversations, all those things. But then it's what do you do with it, right? Like where does it go from there? How do you, again, I like the term, bring it to life. How do you bring your culture to life on a regular basis? And I would go back to the things that we're doing as a TMI team, which is, again, we're intentional. We talk about it as a strategic whole and a holistic process, right? There are gaps. To be human is to have gaps, right? Mm-hmm. And so our job then is in how do we develop those as people, which is part of why I love what we're doing with our team. And, when I heard you say, we're unlocking human potential, I'm always like, oh, I love that phrase. But part of that is what we're doing, right? We are listening for where can we do better? How can we help them develop? And then how can we do it intentionally? Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing I wanted to share, we were asked after a recent episode of give us a little bit more in the life of what TMI is ultimately trying to accomplish for the teams and organizations it supports. So the big difference is we're not one-off, right? Our goal is to align to organizations who say we have strategic goals and objectives. We have recognition that investing in our team unlocks the potential. And then we also have recognition that investing in individuals helps unlock potential. And we want to help you do both, right? We want to come alongside of you to look at it from a team perspective and also recognize that individuals have their own development and journeys. We call them the learners. So in our platform, we listen to the feedback from the learners and we listen to the feedback from, call it the human resource talent development team, as well as hiring managers. And our goal is to be with you on a journey. So as Melanie was sharing about some of the work we've done with Cards for Culture and work we're doing with alignment, it's a part of a journey. We're building out journeys for clients. We're saying, hey, over the next X amount of months, whether that's 54, 36, 48, or 12, what do you hope to accomplish? Where do you want to be? And then, oh, by the way, let us help you figure out what could be holding you back. In some cases, teams come to us and say, we know what's holding us back. We would also say, well, we'd like to look at the data behind it, right? We appreciate that leaders have some knowledge, more knowledge than we do of certain aspects of their teams. But we're able to look at it and say, hey, here's what we also see. When we ask the question, these three people did not speak up. We want to draw them out. We want to involve them in the culture. Because if you really want to invest in unlocking human potential of all of your team, then every voice matters around the table. How do you create that experience, that environment of belonging? And then how do we stage this, right? We say sometimes it takes 2 to 3 sessions for the facilitation and coaches to really build trust amongst the group. I say that our goal is to help you speed up the rate of problem solving, the rate of engagement, that we're literally we use the phrase flywheel a lot. We're literally going to help you speed up your flywheel to becoming a talent magnet, because there's going to be such a great sense of trust, connection, and realizing that it's okay to disagree. It's okay to create tension in the room to get us further faster, right? So part of this is this very in-depth approach around team member development, team development, aligning teams. I was with a client just yesterday that really brought up the phrase cohorts a lot. We use the phrase cohorts a lot. They use the phrase cohorts a lot. We want to organize our teams in cohorts next year, cross-functional cohorts, and create conversations inside these environments. So that's part of what we're doing, and involving various aspects of leadership development, team building, communications, health and wellness, self-care, mental well-being. Health and well-being is what the client yesterday were referencing. And we like to say, we embed all of it, because we're taking it through the lens. In order to unlock human potential, I got to take care of the human and the team and create alignment and connection with all the above. So that's going into just a little bit more detail, which was something that was asked of share a little bit about what TMI is doing today. Early on, back in 2020, we were a digital learning platform. What we've learned is asynchronous learning is a part, but when you start using asynchronous learning on top of facilitation, team building, strategy work, alignment, connection, and creating culture, healthier culture, that's what moves you further faster.
For sure. As you're saying that, I have so many thoughts because you're right on par with what we're trying to do. I mean, I love that. And I was thinking, as you said it, I thought, I can hear people saying, well, why do I need somebody to help me do this, right? Like, I'm human, I can do this, or I think I can develop a great culture, or we've heard that around even like the wellness and burnout things. What I love is that I know we've gathered data to support it. I know you kind of glazed over that as you said it, but I'm like, I think that's really important, right? Yeah. To say like, this isn't stuff we're making up, right? Like, we're gathering the data. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about that as well. Like, where are we getting it from, Mike?
Yeah, so we're getting data from all aspects of our engagement. So we're doing our own measurement. We're measuring, for example, if you're only on our asynchronous learning platform, is your absorption and impact greater or less than if you're getting additional coaching to apply to the asynchronous learning? Are you more likely or less likely to have a greater impact of a team if your team is in the digital learning platform only, digital learning plus coaching, digital learning plus facilitation plus coaching? Mm-hmm. We're measuring all of the impacts that clients and learners are giving us data on. So it's not just, do you believe your team is more effective? It's also asking learners, how are you feeling about this journey? What do you want to learn? What topics? I always tell people we've built a platform to be relational because that's who we are. We truly care about the individual and the whole. But what I say is most organizations don't have data of what their learners want to learn. They have data around what they believe their team should know. And then we're hearing, if you were to have no judgment at all with your superiors or with those you report to, or no judgment at all by the HR department, by the CEO, and if they were to sit down with you and say, hey, where do you feel weak, inadequate, not as confident? How could we shore those up? How could we give you a feeling of adequacy? How can we help you show up with more confidence? And what do you not know that you wish you knew because you're managing a team of 7 people or a team of 137 people or 17 people? That's who we are. So we're collecting the data, asking learners, how can we work with you to increase your confidence, your ability, your belief in yourself so that you can demonstrate that to your team? So our platform as a whole, Talent Magnet Institute, is collecting data from all aspects. We even have a measurement expert on our team who has a PhD in IO psychology. She has spent her entire career with assessment and assessment companies and building team member effective assessment work inside of some of the largest organizations in the world. And she's been on our team since the beginning of the journey. In fact, prior to us incorporating our team, we knew we wanted to be data-driven. And we want to be data-led, data-informed. We want to be able to take a client's inputs from their employees and listen to those employee data points and say, all right, if we put this through our platform, here are the things that we recommend you start with. This is what the data tells us. Many organizations, Melanie, are not able to move quick enough, right? Having an agile environment like us and the work we're doing is why we created ourselves. It's why we said we want to help organizations win faster. We want to help organizations create higher performing teams and actually be able to measure against it as to what's holding them back and how do they become one. So all of that work, you can only do that if you're using science and inputs from everyone and getting people to trust you enough to say, hey, I manage a team, but one of our number one data points in our platform is managers and people leaders telling us they wish they had more skill and development in manager team effectiveness, in self-management effectiveness. There are a lot of cultures where you wouldn't go tell your manager, hey, I know you have me leading an organization of 27 people, 270 people. I actually don't feel effective, and I don't know how to get more effective. Well, again, safe place, that's what TMI does, right? You can never tell us too much information on your leadership needs and on your personal challenges and struggles, because that's why we exist. Our goal is to help you elevate and unlock yourself and transfer that into your team environment. So I hope that gives a little bit more information on some of the data and research we're keeping track of.
And so as you're saying that, I'm thinking it's important, I think, for people to know that we're doing it in a way that's either supplementing current teams, right? So like we're looking at teams that have, what do we usually say, like 0 to 3 HR people, where we can come in and say, hey, we can supplement what you're already doing. If you don't have a plan, we can help create that, right? Like there's a variety of things that we could do to really help in those areas. And then I like too that we can do it in a way where we're listening for the learner's style, right? So when you just said there's this style of learning where I might like to go online and learn asynchronous at my own pace. I may like to sit in a classroom setting and learn from a facilitated, presenter. I may like to gamify, right? And sit around a table. And so we're trying to do it in a way that impacts all learners and do it in a way that then it becomes part of what, becomes part of the thread of part of what you're trying to do. That's versus right. Just, these aren't just one-offs.
All right, we're going to take a quick second to hear from our sponsors and partners.
So one of the hardest parts about podcasting is the moment you stop talking. I mean, think about it. The majority of the work that you probably put into creating a podcast is in the editing phase. So what if you didn't have to do the editing phase? Here at the Cincinnati Podcast Studio, we help you just come in and talk. We do all the rest. We have the cameras, we have the microphones, we have the lights, and then we have the editing tools to create the perfect content out of your podcast. Not only do you get the full podcast in video and audio, you also get short form content that you can use across all of your pages in social media. So if you want to learn more, go to cincinnatipodcaststudio.com/tour to learn more and schedule your tour with us today.
That's right. And the other aspect is what we also say is looking for teams who are seeking an area to either innovate, reinvent, or here's an area in our organization we're just not doing anything for. And we know it gives us a pit in our stomach as an organization client that's approaching TMI. We really want to offer something to senior managers, directors. We spend a lot of time investing in C-suite. Or we spend no time investing in C-suite because we spend all of our time here. We hear both. It's been a while since the C-suite has had any leadership development on us because we're trying to do that with everyone else. Or, you know what? We say we wish we had stronger supervisors and managers and frontline supervisors in the organization. But when we look around, we go, well, we're not doing anything to get there. Maybe we should call TMI to help us. So we're trying to bring these innovative ideas into organizations, and some, have 0 to 3 HR leaders. Some have 17 or 36 people just in learning and development department, right? And all of the above that are just like, let's innovate. Let's bring something else. Let's have an outside view, look at the data that we already collect. What are we missing? What should we get curious about? What would TMI, when they look at this data, where would they invest the time and resources? And then how do we execute and build a calendar, build a schedule? I told a company just yesterday, it's kind of like a book study. Like we're going to map out everything of here's the experience we're going to be on. Here's the journey we're going to be on together. We love you also using the word journeys. Here's the journey we're going to be on together for the next 18 months. Here's what the journey is going to look like. Here's what the schedule is going to look like. And here's the consistency of us getting together to keep everyone on track to make progress. So many times we hear organizations say, we've got access to lots of learning platforms, and our usage is terrible.
Yeah.
The data, the experiences, when we watch the usage data of our user profiles, it doesn't go up and to the right. And what we say is, I get it, right? Independent learners will dive into learning platforms more likely themselves than if they're on a team that they were given an access code. However, if you do the next level of innovation, TMI book study like experiences.
Right.
I love that book studies is like one of the key innovative statements but it works because I know even if I don't get through the content material and I don't do the reading I'm supposed to, I'm going to show up and have a great conversation. Mm-hmm. However, it holds you accountable when I'm going to be in a room of 18 of my peers and those who report to me that rely on me and those that I rely on. We're all going to be here in this dialogue together. You're much more likely in a level of that kind of accountability. So wrapping a cohort around your learning experience is a next level opportunity, right? Independent, yes, individuals need to be responsible for their own development, but what can we do as an organization to help amplify that experience? Building out learning cohorts, creating cross-functional teams that gather together, that spend time together. They're going to build relationships. I always, they're going to problem solve faster. Mm-hmm. They're going to bring real world experiences into what they're learning and say, did we really approach that situation A with this type of dynamic? No. Well, what would it have looked differently if we learned how to be more transparent, leaning into crucial conversations, looking at, thinking more with design thinking like structure, asking tougher questions, not allowing the unsaid to just exist in the team. You can do all of that when you're in some type of cohort environment.
Accountability factor, right? That's what you're. Yes. So as we're thinking about those things, I think sometimes people approach like an L&D environment, which is a checkbox, right? Like, well, I need to do this. Thinking of it more holistically, thinking about how you can, if you have an L&D plan, which, we're helping people create those strategies and we're addressing gaps and things we've seen across when you're following up though with the things that you mentioned, right? So whether that's individualized coaching or the online platform, I think that's all great. And I would love for people to think of TMI as an accountability partner, right? Like we are there to say, hey, there's a better way to do this and let us help you get it done, or hold your feet to the fire, whatever pieces you need to that.
Yeah. So one of the things that a few of you may be watching going, you know what? I didn't know that Melanie and Mike came together.
Oh.
And that, Melanie and I met 12, 13, maybe 14 years ago when she was in an HR leadership role. And my only regret is that we didn't know each other even further. Right. But we, over the last few years, have had conversations. Melanie was the one of the owners of a company that I participated in publishing 2 books through, which many people know, the great authorship that you helped a lot of people get into the author game.
Thank you.
And then we started having these conversations, right, about worldview and leadership and impact and opportunity. And to say that TMI's vision is coming to life is an understatement. Like we are amplifying what leadership really looks like. And that's what kind of led us into some conversations to join forces here.
Totally agree. We were having that idea, I think, of what can we do to make 1 + 1 = many, right? Like how we know we can impact more people by bringing together all the cool things that we've been doing. Yeah. So,
and Melanie and I have an amazing amount of partners, of relationships, of friends that our circles intersect a little, but by bringing together that combination, it's like the X + Y factor, right? So just to go into a little deeper what you just referenced, like we're leveling up and we're involving others as well. Because, I got asked yesterday, what is your capacity like if we were to have you coach more than 100 people in the next year? We can do that, right? We have teams, we have connections, we have resources to do that.
Part of why that works for us too, Mike, is because we have an abundance mentality, right? Mm-hmm. We do very little to say, oh yeah, we don't say that's a competitor, right? We really work hard to say, we just want you to learn. Mm-hmm. We want you to do better. That's fine. Use, Betty, use whoever, we want you to learn as long as we want you to do it. That's the most important piece. And we'll happily fill in where you need it, or if you want to make a change and try something new, like we can do that as well. And I think that's a really endearing piece. And we think that even with like our faculty, so TMI has, we say roughly 30 faculty right now. We're always working in making sure those are good people who can get in front of great clients to move things forward for them in a good way. I think that's where our partnership can even is becoming even stronger, because you have great connections. I've got some new ones, where when people come to us and say, hey, I have this issue, between the two of us, we're like, ooh, this person came to mind. We can offer a few things. Yeah. So I think that's been helpful.
Yeah. And to your point, like, again, what learning and development you're doing today, continue to do, because that's awesome.
For
right?
sure.
And the fact that you're doing something is highly valuable, and you need to be doing more of something. We're another solution. I was guided early on by one of our board members to coach me. Never tell an HR organization you have a better way, because they're working their tail off to do the great work they're doing, which I 100% agree with. But it was a board member who was an HR executive who said, we're striving so hard in human resources to do everything possible to develop and invest in our teams. But there's also, whatever you want to say, 1,200 plates you're spinning, 1,700 plates you're spinning on any given week in that function, that our goal is to come alongside of you. I feel the same way about other offerings around learning and development. Do as many as possible. Some are 6-month programs, some are 12-month programs. I do say, like, ours is a continuous learning journey. A lot of our customers have us, we have some of our founding clients from 5 years ago who every year we're doing something with them, and they're also using other resources. 100% okay. We encourage you to do that. Fill gaps, add additional.
Love it.
And that's what, that's that abundance piece of like, just do something. And then, oh, by the way, we'll be here too, right? We can walk alongside of you. We can take a group you're not doing something with and add something into them, or we can help be like foundational, because we can collect all of the data and we can gain the perspective of what people are learning. And we can tell you, hey, this program you're using is actually having an impact. We may want to offer that even if it's not through us. Meanwhile, we have amazing faculty. We're building all kinds of new and innovative programs. Like last year, we brought a CHRO mastermind to market, right? 2023, we were envisioning it. We used to do Centennial, our founding company, used to do a CEO roundtable. We took learnings from that and embedded and started coming up with a topic around, we call it CHRO Mastermind, and it's for any head of HR. So the individual who is reporting to president, CEO, or executive director, the highest level HR person, we would argue on their behalf that there's not necessarily safe places for them to go work on themselves, their own development, and be in a community of other peers.
And the data shows, right, that presidents, CEOs, and HR leaders are the most isolated in their organizations. I got that from you, Mike, by the way.
Our data shows.
Our data shows, which I think is very profound, right? Because what we're saying is, hey, you need to put your mask on first. That analogy tends to resonate with people, right? When we say, we've all seen that in the airplanes, right? Put your own mask on first so that you can serve others. And HR leaders, and I know from working in corporate America to working in as a solo HR person, right? You are so busy doing all the things that there is just no way you can get it all done.
Right.
And if you take that mindset of, we want you to be successful. We want you to do it all. I actually spoke in 2019 in Vegas, and that was our topic, was how can you be an HR department of one, again, I'm speaking to a smaller market here, and get it all done. And again, whether you're the CHRO at a bigger organization, leading a bunch of people, I think you oftentimes just feel you feel like you're isolated. You feel that aloneness. And that's what I think is the coolest thing about our HR mastermind. It is all of that. It's all those things. It isn't just networking. But I loved the example that the one leader gave us where she said, when I was, I don't know eloquently say this, when I was cutting my teeth in HR, she said, I worked for a big company and I had to build a network when you're in a company, you don't build your network, right? Like you're kind of comfortable. You don't do a whole lot of that. And she said, we had an organization where we knew, without naming any names, she's like, we knew every holiday season we were going to be laying people off. After we did a bunch of things, logistics, deliveries, whatever, we would lay people off. And she said, so I went around to all the companies around us and I started knocking on doors and I was like, hey, I don't want to lay all these people off. Do you have jobs for them in the next run? And she said, I created this network of HR leaders where I could say, hey, we don't want to lay people off. Let's help each other. And it was awesome. She goes, I don't have time to knock on all the doors now. Like I'm leading, I'm doing all these things. And I said, that's great. That's what we're doing that for you. Like literally, or I'm calling people, right? But we're building that. We're helping build that so you can create that connection with people. So you have that already built in. And again, more than just the network, but it is that we're problem solving together. We're sharing best practices and tools and resources. And when we can use our online platform, right, we're doing those things. Yeah. So I think there's so much strength in this mastermind we're building to build into current leaders. And then we heard people say, I want you to build into future leaders too, right? So hearing people say, well, hey, I might not be able to attend this, but I have high potentials who I would love to have attend. Awesome. Like, I think that's really great about the work we're doing too, where we can pivot and say, okay, we're hearing our community ask for another mastermind around high potentials, right?
Yeah. The words we just heard in this past couple weeks of, what's the value of being in this group? I gain connection. I gain community. I gain a safe place to ask really tough questions that, to be frank, when you're part of the isolation data that we collected is when you're the president, CEO, executive director, and when you're the head of HR, everyone expects for you to have all the answers. And there isn't a natural place to go. You as the people leader are supposed to know all things when people are peopling. And what if I need some outside perspective? What if I need what could I learn from those who have gone before me, from those who experienced something I'm about to experience on an acquisition, on a international expansion, on a sale, on moving from a privately held organization to an ESOP. Like, what do I not know that it would be really helpful to surround myself with people who might know? Yeah. And so connection, community, education, safe place, environment of also independent, my personal development. I had a leader in 2024 tell me, Mike, I think it's been 32 years since I invested in myself in a program.
Oh my goodness.
I've heard 32, I've heard 27, I've heard 17 of like, when was the last time you put your oxygen mask on and got built into and got invested in and felt like you were not just the one giving, but you were also getting and you were gaining. And that's what we've been doing. So,
well, were they wearing that like a badge of honor? Like, I haven't done it for 32 years, or was it like a little embarrassed?
I think there's a little bit of that. It's more of just like, I'm so busy focusing on everyone else that I don't really think about myself. In fact, I had one corporate officer of a leadership team say, I'm going to let that individual know that we have already pre-approved her budget to do this because she approves our budgets to do our own development. So this was literally one of her peers who said, I'm the CFO. Yeah. She always tells us here are things that would be really great for our own development, but I'm going to go tell her, hey, I've already pre-approved the finances for you.
Giving HR people and leaders the ability and the permission to take care of themselves, which is actually kind of sad that we have to say that, but take care of you.
For me, it's a good thing. So Melanie, as you were referencing, like, we're looking at right now, we're getting ready to launch another mastermind for the heads of HR. Our hope is to, have a couple of more that get launched in the current year, but we're looking at a high potentials group. We're looking at possibly a learning and development group. And we've been asked by clients to launch a cross-functional group where there are individuals of varying functions in that where I can send leaders. And we're trying to look at that. One of our research points tells us that investing in your team as a team creates rapid acceleration in accomplishment, achievement, and removing barriers. So what I mean by that is, we love to work with teams. There's a reason why most of our work is being done on a team cohort type style, because we believe that we've got some secret sauce that can help your team align, connect, and move further faster as a part of our strategy of unlocking their potential and unlocking your team's potential and your organization's potential. However, there is a place for learning from others outside your organization. So we're trying to evaluate where that fits in, because we don't want to lose the effectiveness that we're seeing in the rate of teamwork and team development. But how can we invest in cross-functional groups that are not all from the same team and enable them to bring that learning back, which is where we're really stuck. I mean, for those of you listening, you probably have sat in your own workshops and conferences and learning experiences where you've flown back to your home office and you've gone, nobody here attended this with me. And I am so fired up coming out of this conference. And how am I actually going to mobilize, educate people that didn't attend it with me, right? So that's kind of like when you're with a whole team and you're learning together, that learning just transcends everything you think about this week as a group, because you can go, that session we were in with TMI 3 weeks ago, this is a great example of what we were talking about. Versus, that conference I attended in New York City by myself with a client, that was a great 2-day conference, and I left all fired up and inspired, and I took 92 pages of notes. Nobody else here participated with me. So we're trying to learn from that, and what does that look like, and how can you take the mastermind theory of learning, the roundtable theory of learning into groups. We know there's amazing places for it. We also know there's already incredible partners who do that kind of work, and we're trying to evaluate where is our space and how do we not lose our kind of ethos of unlocking team potential and organization potential, while also focusing on the individual. So we're brainstorming through this. We're open to your feedback. We're looking at, a couple of potential virtual options as well, because we have HR leaders from throughout the nation that are knocking on our door, and we've tried to make it a localized experience, but we may have to think about what does a virtual option with a couple of experiences where we get everyone together look like, and we're brainstorming through those now.
That element of, listening for the need and delivering, I think that is, pervasive in all the work that we're doing. We're used to dealing with some of the smartest people, right? We're talking about leaders and organizations and HR leaders. So a lot of times you're dealing with the smartest person at the table, or that they believe they are, right? We're all the smartest person at the table. But that idea that you are building in, you have to have a little bit of humility, and you have to have that idea that we're better collectively. What's the phrase? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Kind of that idea, right?
Yep.
That
absolutely
we're doing those things. So as you're saying that, I know you're giving me a little of a precursor to some of the things that we're working on in 2025, which might be that future. What is a great L&D program for teams, right? So let's go together. And how do we get everyone excited to move that stuff along?
That's right. How do we train the trainer? Yeah. What does training and development look like for individuals who are responsible to train others and learn from others? And what can we bring around the science and data that we're collecting around learning and infiltrate into that function and really help elevate and advance further faster?
Yeah. And we've been asked to do some work in the well-being and burnout space. And so even with that, that's a very personal thing that for some, we know everyone's on the burnout spectrum. So you're not alone. You're either, we all experience it in some way or fashion. So what can you do for that, right? How can you address that as a form of development, right? I think that we're overlooking that sometimes, in the fact that people want to stuff it down and be like, hey, I'm fine. And I think that's an important element that we're trying to address as well.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. So people tell us independently, we all need investment in self-care. We all need investment in mental and emotional health. We all need investment in health and well-being. And yet, if you put a speaking framework about topics, leadership topics, on a piece of paper and let people choose, they go to tactical items like performance and feedback and,
communication skills. I'm trying to think what else was in our.
And not self-care or mental well-being. They'll go to, around performance, accomplishment, achievement, goal setting.
That's our achievement culture speaking, right? Like where everyone gets.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do, Melanie and I are literally trying to weave this in. So our faculty, they're weaving it in. They know as a core value of TMI that people matter. And if people matter, I say, like, yes, your team and organization success matters, but what matters more to us is your people. And we want to help build a culture where like people matter so much that it's okay to say, hey, we're going to offer some well-being coaching. We're going to offer some health and wellness coaching. We're going to offer some, self-care. We're going to take our self-care data that thousands and thousands of people complete our self-care quiz. Hundreds of people every couple of weeks take our self-care quiz, unprompted by us, that people find it. We're going to weave some of that data into the overall work we do because it matters. So our goal is, we may not hit you right between the eyes that you need to offer this health and well-being 6-week or 6-month experience, but we're going to include it in the content material because people matter. Yeah. And we're going to keep ringing the bell so that even the topics that we're going to be covering in these conversations, where people are like, I want to hear more about that. I want to understand, because if you get your education on self-care and well-being through the Unconventional Leadership Podcast, it is an unconventional leadership topic of self-care. We want to make it not as unconventional by professing it and putting it out into the world where people are like, you know what? It's exactly what I need. My team needs that. I'm going to offer this quiz. I'm going to offer these classes, these courses, this coaching as an option. If people want to take it, you'll be surprised how many people say, yes, please sign me up. That's an amazing offer. We've had some employees who have said, hey, I've never been with a company in my 9-year, 16-year, 23-year career that ever offered me anything like this. This is amazing. And you're going to get all the credit for it because it's your company who's going to be offering it, right? So that's what we want to be doing. That's unconventional. Mm-hmm. So, Melanie, share with me what you're most excited about in 2025 relating to the team and impact work that we're going to be doing with TMI.
Yeah, so I'm really excited that I feel like it was a very smart move on our part, Mike, for us to take the culture work and stuff that we're doing and shift it into what I call as our great like leadership platform. And when we speak this stuff, I've been saying for years, making the world better, one leader at a time, one workplace at a time. And it feels a bit heavy, a bit lofty at times. We as Americans have been going through a lot of stuff, societal stuff. And here we are really trying to make an impact, right? Really trying to dig in and say, hey, this stuff that we're doing matters at all levels. Mm-hmm. And if you believe that you should enjoy your workplace, if you spend more time at work than you do with your loved ones, which so many of us do, we really do believe you should be enjoying it. I have a mantra, it's on my LinkedIn page, right? Life's too short to work with jerks. And I think that we are making changes. People are recognizing, I want to do better. So as we're heading into 2025, I'm just most excited for the fact that we're coming together. We have a united front. We're spreading a great message. We know that if you do these things, so right, you're proactive, you're intentional, you care about others, that you can really drive forward and create transformational results. But you have to put in a little bit of work. Mm-hmm. This is something that takes a little bit of time and effort. And I can see that with our team. And I see our message spreading. Like I'm just excited for the impact that is yet to come. And it's good, all good things.
It's awesome. Well, I'm most excited about the team that I get the honor and pleasure of building this with, right? That's from yourself and the rest of our support team that's working with us, our partners, our faculty, our advisors that are leaning in so much that they're just a part of who we are, right? That's when you know you got great advisors around the table, and the organizations that are like, hey, knock, knock. Can we get more of that? Mm-hmm. We want to do more of that, to the point where organizations come to us after a few years of building credibility and trust that are like, hey, here's our budget for next year. Can you please design a similar uplifting experience like we had this past year? Not same content material, but like do it again. Hey, can we do that again? Because whatever we did is working. Mm-hmm. I had a recent director of an organization share with us in one of our feedback sessions. I've never been with a company who has taken such a proactive stance on developing me as an individual, as a team member. And we do that with 12 people actively in their organization that we're working with. There's 12 to 13 individuals who are actively engaged in the development strategy that are our focal point for their organization are these 13 individuals. And, that intentional leadership, that's unconventional. Being intentional should not be unconventional, mm-hmm. but it is. I do say there's many times it's like, pinch me. I'm living in a world where caring about others, understanding that people matter, being intentional, taking a proactive approach to learning and development is unconventional. Well, we're going to keep ringing that bell, and we're going to keep staying focused on that to have great impact. So we look forward to the dialogues, to the conversations, to the inputs, to the comments that you even make on this, the video, this mm-hmm. podcast. And I'm excited about what we're going to be doing together in the coming years, decades. So thank you for being a part of this conversation today. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. I look forward to engaging with you on the next episode of the Unconventional Leadership Podcast. Thank you for joining this episode of the Unconventional Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed the discussion, if you want to ask questions, if you want to leave a comment, please do. Please share. And even if you'd be so kind to rate and leave a review. I want to thank the Cincinnati Podcast Studio for the great production of this episode. We look forward to the next conversation to help you unlock your potential.